So what's up people, it's your boy OT and welcome to Steady Bro. In this video we'll be looking at arrhythmias of the ventricles, mainly ventricular tachycardias and ventricular fibrillation. What is a ventricular tachycardia? A ventricular tachycardia is when there is an abnormal rapid beating of the heart originating from the ventricles. A ventricular tachycardia occurs when there is a damage to the conductive pathway of the heart within the ventricles. This can occur after a myocardial infarction, a heart attack, or other cardiomyopathies, other problems with the heart. In ventricular tachycardias, the source of the impulse is within the ventricles. But because this source is not following the normal pathway, it takes it longer to depolarize the ventricles. And this shows up on an ECG as an abnormally wide and abnormally broad QRS complex. You can think of ventricular tachycardias almost in the same way that you would think of an atrial flutter, in as the source is one. It's coming from one place. It's not like atrial fibrillation where it's all chaotic. The source of this arrhythmia is within the ventricles, but it's coming from one place. But because it's not the same pathway, this results in a broader QRS complex on an ECG graph. However, the QRS complex, though abnormally large, abnormally broad, they are still regular nonetheless. So now let's look at ventricular fibrillations. In terms of how you try to wrap your head around it, you can think of them like atrial fibrillation but within the ventricles. They are very distinct in terms of the severity and the panic one goes through when he sees a ventricular fibrillation and atrial fibrillation. They are worlds apart. In ventricular fibrillation, like atrial fibrillation, the source of the arrhythmia is multifoci, as in there are multiple spots, multiple areas within the ventricle, all discharging electrical impulses trying to depolarize the ventricles. When this chaos occurs within the ventricles, it is dangerous because it literally puts your heart in a standstill. It does brrr, but does not contract, brrr, but no contraction. So basically you are dying. It's not a good sign. When you see that, call somebody. It is an emergency. That is what I'm trying to get at. In ventricular fibrillation, it is chaotic due to the multifoci, the multiple sources, the multiple spots within the ventricles trying to contract it and achieving absolutely nothing. Hope that is making sense. Question is, what do we see on an ECG trace? So on an ECG trace, because the foci are multiple, similar to an atrial fibrillation, you see noise on the baseline. And additionally, you did not see any QRS complexes on the ECG graph. This is because your ventricles are not contracting, your ventricles are not being depolarized. It's a lot of noise, there is no substance, and this is very, very dangerous. Let's sum it up. In ventricular tachycardia, there is an arrhythmia originated from the ventricles. This is due to a damage within the conductive pathway inside the ventricles. Because there is a damage, the source of this impulse is not following that same path we expect a normal heart to follow. And this appears on an ECG graph as an abnormally wide QRS complex. The rhythm of this rapid heart rate is regular. Ventricular fibrillation is chaos, multiple areas within the ventricles, all trying to depolarize the ventricles. And when this occurs, the ventricles is at a standstill. It cannot contract. Resource. On an ECG, you see a lot of noise at the baseline because there's multiple foci. You don't see any QRS complexes on an ECG because the ventricles are effectively non-contracting. I hope that made sense. If there's anything I said that wasn't clear, if there's anything I can improve to make the videos much simpler to understand and follow, highlight your boy in the comments and we'll take it from there. So, it's your boy OT. I'm out. Salutes.